All righty. Hello, everyone. Sarah, thank you so much for being here. I can't tell you how excited I am about this.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me. And hello, thank you to everyone who's watching.
For everyone that is watching, I just wanted to start off by saying that a lot of what we're going to talk about throughout this is discussed in your books. So I'm going to have the links to, well, everything, your books, your website, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all of that. So I just wanted to get that out of the way just so everyone knows that I'll be sure to have all the ways they can contact you and follow you and all of that in the description. So I definitely want to eventually talk about the work that you're doing now. It is incredible, but I want to save that to the end if that's okay. There's so much to talk about with your story. I would love if we could go back to kind of your background and your upbringing. You've had a wild ride since the very beginning. Wild.
Yes, that's
I
exactly how I
my
describe
hat goes off to you a million times over. Seriously, Sarah, you have been through some things.
it.
Um,
Thank you.
and what you are now doing, what you've been through and what you've turned it into is it's just incredible. It really is. So please, let's start with your background, your upbringing. Tell us about South Dakota and your family. Kind of lead us up to what started to happen around 7 years old, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I was raised in a tiny town in South Dakota, right surrounded by Standing Rock Indian Reservation. The town is 2,000 people, middle of nowhere, and this is before the internet. So that's important because I'm just a normal kid, just like anybody who's cruising around trying to like fit in and belong and have a sense of safety and, figure out life. And my family dynamic was highly toxic and dysfunctional. I think those words are kind of overused in today's world, but very violent, very chaotic, very unstable. And I didn't have a lot of, I couldn't go, there was no safe person or place for me to just be a kid. So that was one dynamic. And then at the age of 7, one day I woke up, and this was just like pouring gasoline on, on everything. I woke up and I could see auric fields around people. And so my high sense perception, my intuitive ability, my psychic ability, whatever you want to call it came on one morning when I was 7, and it continued to increase over the course of several weeks. So started with auric fields and colors, then I could feel their feelings, then I knew what they were thinking, then I could tell if they were lying, and then I could see disease in their bodies, and then I could see dead people. And I'm just like this kid who's like, ah, I didn't know. I just thought this is what everybody's life was like because, why would I know any different? But I was really spacey, and I always had a headache. I was always rubbing my eyes because I couldn't ground. I didn't understand what that was at the time. But it's just like full sensory bombardment, right?
Mhm.
And then dealing with a lot of violent daily episodes on top of that. So that really primed me for, the life I've lived and who I've become. But one day I finally decided, all right, I got to ask somebody in my family, like, what is this? Like, do you guys see this too? And unfortunately, they did the hellfire and brimstone bit. Like, we'll send you to a loony bin. You're going to burn in hell. Never talk about that. And so I'm just this kid who's like being nuked with all this sensory input, not feeling safe anyway. And then that moment was pivotal for me. And I think so many people can relate to feeling like they don't fit in, right? Or that there's something wrong with them. Well, that moment burned in my little 7-year-old brain as toxic shame. There's
Mhm.
something wrong with me.
Mhm.
Why am I like this? Why can't I be normal? Right. And that that was the next 25 years of my life. Like, why can't I be normal? Why can't I fit in? Why does the stimulus, why is it always present? Why does it not go away? And I really began the process of, I was so scared. And fast forward my senior year. So I coped at the time by not talking about it, which I think a lot of us do.
Mhm.
And time, then I started overachieving. So I would be the best at everything, or I would run a gazillion miles, or I would, something to like have a sense of safety and power. And in the imbalanced structure that I was living in. Well, my mom, when I was 17, my senior year, diagnoses to death was 6 months. It was a quick cancer cycle.
Wow.
And I just remember, so a lot of the violence was stemmed from my relationship with my mother. And I understand now, like she's one of the master teachers of my life because she just handed me my ass. You know what I'm saying? I wanted the love and safety and connection of a mother-daughter dynamic, and I never got that. And so that set me up again for a lot of what's wrong with me and a lot of mother wounds. I had a lot of father wounds on top of the dynamics to recover and integrate from later. But she died, and then I just went off the rails because I was still hoping to have a semblance of family normalcy. Like I was just like grasping at my little strings of like, maybe if I do better, maybe if I achieve more, maybe it'll, and how many of us can relate to that conditional
Absolutely.
love, right? Like we
Mm.
have to do something to be okay somehow. And so when she died, it just blew everything sky high for me and I totally destabilized. So we can get into the rest of that, but do you have any questions?
Absolutely. Yes. So thank you. Thank you for that. So talking about kind of going into you overachieving and all of that, something you began to you got into long distance running. And did that start in high school?
Yes. Yeah, I was on the bench at like basketball, but I was with all my friends. But you know how they used to make us run the mile and track, and I'd go
Yes.
out there and just done. And so I got poached, and they're like, "You should come join cross country." And I was like, "I don't know." But I went for my first long run, and it just lit me up with endorphins, and it changed my life forever. So running became a moving meditation for me
Yes.
because my feet, the rhythm of my feet crunching on the gravel way out in the middle of nowhere in the prairie and my breath, I would go into a heightened state of awareness and finally be able to kind of channel and process some of the stimulus my system was dealing with. Granted, I had no idea what I
Right.
was doing at the time.
Right.
It
Right.
was just like, oh, this feels better, you know?
Oh, incredible. So I wanted to talk about, because this will kind of set things up for once we get into college and your NDE and things of that nature. But I would love for you to talk about the time when I believe you were running and you had tripped and you ended up seeing a young Native American girl as well as a chief. Can you tell us about all of that?
So it was another particularly violent day in my household. And I was just maxed with the stimulus, with the violence. And so I went out for a long run. And I'm just a kid and I'm probably hitting 8 to 10 miles a day.
Wow.
That's a lot for a kid, just to give
Wow.
you context of like, I was trying so hard to be okay that
Mm.
it was like, okay. And I was just maxed. I was over it. I was pissed. I don't want to be like this. I didn't want to be like this. This isn't something I subscribed or like actively signed up for. Now I understand, yes, part of the Dharma, part of the soul contract. But when we come in and we forget, and then life is really challenging as an ultrasensitive as it can be, it doesn't necessarily feel like, oh yeah, sign me up for this. So I was pissed. I didn't understand. And I felt like everything was against me, right? The family dynamics were against me. The energy stimulus, it just wouldn't leave me alone. So I felt very violated. So I was pissed and I was way out there running. I'll never forget because I tend to like talk out loud when I'm running, especially because I'm out in the middle of nowhere by myself. And I was like yelling at the sky or whatever. And then a spirit of a Native American girl appeared. And I just lost my shit because I was like, can I just get a break? And again, didn't understand what or why. So I take off running down this road and I trip on this rock and I just totally eat shit and like spin out on the gravel. And I would just remember having that moment of defeat. Yeah, I was trying so hard to be okay. I'm putting forth all this effort, and I don't understand why my life is the way that it is. And so when I hit the ditch and slid, I just kind of had that like, "Ah, screw it, like moment of just letting down. And then I sensed a very powerful presence behind me. And when I looked back, this Native American chief, so I grew up with Lakota Sioux, the tribe of Lakota Sioux. My family was actually adopted by the tribe, and so we were kind of adjacent with growing up in that culture. And this this spirit of this Indian chief, he was on this beautiful horse and had his headdress and his staff. And he was just looking at me, laying there face down in the gravel, mind you. And I got really sheepish feeling because if you've ever had a heightened experience, like a spiritual experience, a unity consciousness experience, if you've ever experienced like a transcendental meditation, anything like that, you can go into these places and you understand that there's energies and presences that are so vast.
Mm.
It's just humbling to be around. And I remember kind of being really embarrassed that I thought he showed up to like scold me because I was yelling at the other chick. And he didn't talk with his lips, it's telepathic communication, but essentially it was along the lines of, you're okay. Like you're gonna figure this out someday. Like we know it's hard for you now. But it was really cool because everything fractalized, like it just became fragmented in the way of matrix like. So
Wow.
again, now knowing what I know now, granted, I was like 14 at the time or whatever, so I had no idea. But knowing what I know now after 25 years in the spiritual world and having gone through all the different types of healing modalities on myself that I have, I understand heightened states of consciousness and what the, fractals and all of that kind of stuff is. And so it was just a messenger.
Mm.
And that chief has come to me as one of my most powerful guides. I've only seen him a handful of times, maybe four in my whole life. And so anytime he comes anymore, I definitely pay attention because it's like, this is, yeah,
Yeah.
it's
There's
beautiful.
a message meant to be heard. Yeah. Take us kind of through college. So, what's interesting about your story is that you were pushing this stuff away, your gifts, your abilities, you were pushing that away. And from what I've heard from many people, once they start to push it away, it goes away. Um, but for you, it was just there. So you ended up resorting to other things to cope with this once you got to college. Can you talk about that and kind of lead us into your NDE experience?
Absolutely. Yeah, my sensory experience is pretty much full on all the time, 24/7, and still is to this day. It's a lot to take in. So if you imagine yourself at the back of like Target or Best Buy, they got that wall of TV screens. And
Yes.
so say the middle screen is like this reality, but every other screen is just as loud and it's coming at you with different information. Like that's my everyday reality, probably upwards of 10 to 15 screens in an average moment, right? So I have to focus really hard on being like, okay, this is what I'm doing in this reality. And then I've learned discernment over time. I haven't found anything aside from uppers, and I'll talk about that, that nothing would diminish it. Anything like alcohol, any sort of depressants, any of that kind of stuff exacerbated it. And so I went off the rails. When my mom died, I said, screw this crap. And I went off the rails. And so I started drinking. So I was smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day. I was drinking Everclear straight, anything white powder.
Wow.
And I had like meth before meth was a thing because back in the day they used to sell the 100% ephedrine in the truck stop for 6.99, which is like highly illegal now, but
Wow.
that's the main ingredient. And so I found that that would actually calm me down. And now I understand neurochemistry, and I'm not advocating to anybody that they try this because it's not conducive to health,
Mm,
nor is it sustainable. It's just not sustainable. What
absolutely.
I did know, though, neurochemically, this is like Adderall is essentially a speedy like type, and it actually calms the neurochemistry in the synapses. And so my experience, though, was I started being very promiscuous. I started stripping. I was like way off the rails because, again, I felt like I didn't matter. I felt like I was broken. There was something wrong with me. I couldn't, for some reason, conform to what everybody else seemed to be doing in life. And I just didn't have any family. I didn't have any safety. I didn't have any of that support. So I had so much anger.
Mm.
And that really, I was way off the rails for quite a while. I learned a lot about myself during that time, but I ended up overdosing and having my near-death experience when I was about 20.
And when you had overdosed, was that intentional or no? It
Yeah,
was.
at that time it was intentional because
Wow.
I was in this place where I was working in these clubs and I was kind of seeing this world for it was kind of the darker,
Hmm.
seedier energy, but it was a game and I could see how it was how the it was a power play dynamic and kind of what was happening energetically. And so I kind of became a duck to water and I started studying like, well, the energy of these things and figuring out how to kind of thrive in that world. So I was starting to have a sense of like power in this place, but I actually clocked out at 5 a.m. of a club and I woke up like a day and a half later in a parking lot in the middle of Minnesota in my car, like
Wow.
completely no unaware. So obviously I had been roofied or something and assaulted. And that was my lowest point. That was where I was just screw it. I'm over this. And so I went home and I intentionally overdosed because I was like, yeah, I'm done with this shit. Screw this crap. But it was amazing because, again, in the heightened state of consciousness, and I don't have any shame talking about these kinds of things because one, we're all going through something. Two, we're doing
Absolutely.
two, we're doing the best we can, right? And I personally found that being willing to be like, oh yeah, man, like I was all the way there and now I'm here.
Hmm.
Like it helps people, like it gives people that permission to be okay with wherever they are.
Yes.
And to me, there's nothing to, I don't have any shame anymore about who I am because all of those darker, edgier things have actually become wisdom for
Hmm.
me. And I've been able to become one, a better paramedic initially, and now a better healer because I've literally been there myself, you know? And so if you guys are going through something and you feel like, you're not okay or you're embarrassed or you've got shame or whatever, I actually invite you to lean into that part because there's wisdom in there for you if you soften into the acceptance of whatever your behavior is. Just be curious about like, why am I doing this? What am I getting out of this? Like, what's underneath this, And there's all kinds of stuff, but we can get into that. So the near death experience, I had a heightened state of consciousness. I went into like this yummy, beautiful, warm kind of cocoon of golden fractals and like pink fractals. And I was like, yes, I'm done. I did it. And then I heard a female voice and she was very familiar. So I don't know if it was my higher self or if it was just a guide. I didn't know her like I could say this is this person, but she was very familiar. And she was like, yeah, you're not done. And I was like, nah, oh, I'm good. Oh, we're wrapped. I'm good. And she's like, we get it. It's been really hard. She was far more eloquent than this, but she was like, we get it. It's been really hard for you. You signed up for a doozy. But if you choose to go back, you're actually going to help a lot of people understand why they're like this.
Mm.
And so I was there in my little bliss cocoon and everything when you're in a heightened state of consciousness, everything makes sense simultaneously. You know everything from all vantage points simultaneously, and it makes perfect sense. So I was there in heightened consciousness, and they're like, yeah, you're going to go help a bunch of people. And everything made sense. So I was like, okay, cool, I'll come back. What I didn't realize is that coming back to the dualistic little human experience, I had to figure it out for myself. I thought it was going to be like, okay, you chose to come back, so here it's all itemized. This is what you do. And that's not how it goes, unfortunately. Like we still have to do the work,
Yeah,
you know? And
absolutely.
how many of us can relate to having like breakdowns or hitting rock bottom or like going through addiction spirals or going through
Yes.
breakups or divorces and we feel completely like, spun out and lost and we want somebody to come in and help us or tell us what to do, but ultimately we are the ones who get to
Yes.
or have to essentially make those changes for ourselves, right? So I obviously chose to come back because they said if you come any further, you're not going to be able to come back. Obviously, I chose to come back. I hit the ground and I realized, like, oh shit, I got to call 911. And this was really important because it was my first experience with 911 ever. And I was in probably the worst moment of my life that had already had a ton of really bad moments, you know? And I was so vulnerable. And I just remember this paramedic being such a dick. And I like, if I'm ever in that position, I will do it differently.
Wow.
And so it's actually very important, that experience, you know?
Wow.
Yeah.
I
So
have not heard
I,
that part before. That's very interesting.
oh,
Wow.
it was so important because it's just like I saw it. Like, I mean, had he been kind,
Hmm.
it would have been a different experience for
Yeah.
me. You know, there was a lot
Wow.
of judgment, like he was being inconvenienced, you know.
Mm.
And so it was what it was because it lodged in my consciousness enough to be like, mm-mm,
Yeah.
that's not what you do. That's not what I'm gonna do. Right.
Wow.
So I came back. I really had to get honest with myself, Allie, and I had every right to be angry for what I had been through, for the experiences. And at the same time, I was really coming to the understanding that nobody's coming to save me.
Mm.
Nobody's coming to help me. Like, this is on me. And I was so mad. I stomped around for a good 2 weeks, at least, because I was like, I had this chip on my shoulder. And again, I think this is so relatable because we've all gone through stuff. Um, and we've all been through, you know, hardships or traumas. And sometimes we get that jaded or the cynical or the like, I deserve thing,
Mm.
right? Our culture's kind of permeated with that.
Mhm.
Well, it's been hard for me, so I deserve. And I was in that for a while, but I just had this knowing that it was like, this is how it is for you, girl. Like, you're going to see this sensory input. My day-to-day experience is like being on acid 24/7, 365.
Wow.
There's colors, there's tracers, there's feeling their feelings. There's no, it's just this constant, like, boop, 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 always on my field. And I could continue to melt down and stomp around and take all kinds of drugs that were going to kill me. But I tried that route and I chose the other. And then I had to get real with like what I was doing to myself. And I made a list of like, okay, I've got all of these things, substances to kick. I started with the easiest for me is alcohol. That wasn't really a big thing for me. And then I kicked all the white powders and the uppers, and that I went through a full detox. I didn't personally use any programs. You know,
Yeah.
if programs help you guys, then go for that. But I just dug in my heels and went through full withdrawal. And
Wow.
then it took me to step down off of the smoking. But what I did is I started to feel better. So I started to exercise a little more again. And
Hmm.
when I was exercising better, then I wanted to eat better,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I just took it one step at a time and I would tackle one thing for like a week. And then the big substances, that took me a while, several weeks, you know, if not over a month to really get stable without that. But I felt like a toddler because these are all my coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
And I was alone. I was in the Midwest. You know, I was really in a place of like confusion, isolation. There was a lot of people, instead of helping me, they were like making fun of me, you know, like wanting to
Hmm.
kick me when I was down.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I watched myself want to kind of do the victim thing in my mind with that too. And again, we have that choice. We can, like, I could have gone down victim consciousness and stayed there. Anybody who knows what I came through would be like, oh, yeah, we get it.
Yeah.
Totally understand.
Yeah.
But there was something in me where it was like, there's more.
Mm.
There's more. But I had to be willing to be like, okay, all that happened. What am I going to do about it? This is my reality. What am I going to do about it? and not look out here to anybody else to like help me or fix me or save me or do it for me, because inevitably that's externalizing power and is a total setup for disappointment.
So, did you tell anyone about your NDE after it had happened?
Well, the people in the immediate town knew, and they were
Did
like
know.
gossips about it.
Mm,
Yeah.
okay.
But I didn't talk of, they knew about the overdose. They didn't know about my heightened experience during it. And I wasn't in place at the time because I had already been shamed and told I was going to burn in hell for
Absolutely. Yeah.
having visions, you know? So I
Yeah.
don't want to be like, this oracle voice told
Yeah.
me, you know? Still that, like, why is this like this? You know,
Yeah,
I didn't have
absolutely.
any. But I just really brought the my energy in, and I isolated myself, and I stopped contact with anyone who was going to continue to put me down, or
Yes.
anyone who enabled my old behavior.
Mm,
And
mm,
that's because I created space and for my system to rest and myself to kind of go like, what am I doing with my life? Like I have no idea. And from that point, then it was just on a piece of paper, like, okay, these are the things, these are my addictions. This is what I got to do. And there was like 5 big things to, like kick all of these things, eat better, and figure out what you're doing with your life. And just taking that space to myself
mm,
and kind of, was very important.
yeah. Um, the chief that you saw when you were 14 and had been running, did you see him during your NDE as well, or am I getting that wrong?
No, he came when I went back to the house.
Okay. Okay.
After I got myself cleaned up, I left the Midwest and I completely created a new life for myself in Florida. And it was wonderful. That's when I got into like pinup modeling, and I was doing a bunch of fitness modeling and working in the movies, and I'm around all these pro athletes. And so it was like a totally different world. And it was wonderful for what it was because it extricated me out of a place that just was not healthy for me. That said, I didn't do any of my internal healing work. I just got busy like being distracted and glamorous in my 20s, and that was fine for what it was, but it all circled back ultimately because I reached a point where I had the realization that I felt that I needed to go back to the house that I grew up in, where all of the violence, like when I'm talking violence, my mom burned my eyes with nail polish remover. She cracked my skull open with a hammer. She cut my hair off when I was sleeping. She smothered me at night when I was sleeping. It was every day there was some sort of violent assault that was literally, I didn't know if I was going to survive it.
I'm so
So
sorry.
my nervous system was just pinning,
Mm,
right? And at the time, I had, I had gone to LA. I had just kind of floundered around, but my intuition was like, hey, you need to, every time an ambulance would go by, it was like, do that. But I was so scared of it, right? Because being a paramedic comes with a lot of responsibility.
yeah.
And I wasn't quite ready. I had two things. One was to lean into my intuition telling me to become a paramedic. And two, I still had my own healing to do.
Mm,
So a big part of it was me going back ultimately to the Midwest. I went back to the house that I grew up in. It was vacant and for sale. I called the number. They let me go in by myself. And I had this whole like flashback thinking I was going to be killed, at any time. But I had my meltdown when I went up into my room. And the important part of this, Allie, and I think again, it's a relatable thing because we're all looking, it's like we have that ground zero, right? Whether it's a town, whether it's a relationship, whether it's like a physical location, that we hold it in our mind of like, that's the source of the pain.
yes.
Well, I went there to the house thinking that that was the source of the pain and that's what needed to be healed. And I got there and it was just a house. All of the pain was inside of me still. And I was mad about that. I was like thinking it was going to be some like, oh, I got to the childhood home. I'm facing my demons. I'm going back to where it was. Look how brave I am. And it was that. But it was almost like a letdown because I got into that space. But the chief came back when I was in there. And he was essentially like, you've done great. but it's not here. It's in
Mm,
you.
mm.
And that launched into finally beginning to genuinely do my own healing work.
So after college, that's when you went to Florida. You became an assistant to a casting director. You did the modeling. You started to experience some cognitive dissonance there. What was it that pulled you to Florida in the first place?
Well, I went on a vacation after
Okay.
my overdose stabilized, and then I was like, screw it. I just went on a vacation down to Orlando, and I met a boy at SeaWorld. He was one of the BMX bikers in the
That will
SeaWorld
do
show. And that'll do it. And so it's amazing because this is like before cell phones or anything. So I had to like wait to get home to call him.
it.
But two weeks later, I moved down there and we were together for
Oh,
5 years.
wow.
That was very important because it was the first sense of safety I had ever known.
Mm.
And I was able to fully kick like, smoking and get back to health and fitness. And then I went into the Playboy and I was in like all of that world. And then it was fun and it seemed as though it was going to be like a viable career future track, whether it be through the movie stuff or the modeling stuff or whatever. It was kind of like a fast lane life all of a sudden. And it was really, really fun for what it was. But I started to notice because me, being able to see and sense what's not being said, Hollywood is a very superficial place. So I was just kind of like,
Yeah.
doesn't feel good to me. I want something like soulful, you
Yeah.
know? So ultimately I went boom, 911 started in South Central LA. Like it doesn't get any
Wow.
more like
Yeah, yeah, we're gonna beeline it this way. So you were as ambulances would pass by, you would just intuitively know, and deep within you would know that that's what you were supposed to do. Florida had its benefits, but it wasn't where you were ultimately going to stay. So you started to train to be a paramedic. How did you get into actually doing, because you ended up doing this in California. So how did you actually get to California and into training? Was this just a decision you made? Did someone kind of pull you in and say, explain
no,
all of that?
yeah. So we were in Florida 5 years. So it was super fun, like I said, especially in my early 20s, girl. Like,
Yes.
you want to do all that fun glam stuff, you know? And and then my boyfriend at the time, Dave, he got a job out in Hollywood. And so we
Okay.
moved to California. And it wasn't long after we got there that we split. And then I went kind of back into that destabilized, like, what am I doing with my life thing? So I was there just working in a gym and just kind of trying to figure it out. And every time an ambulance would go by, it was like, do that. So finally, I was, kind of living in a ghetto apartment. It was Koreatown, which back then was ghetto. Right now it's nice. It's all revamped now. And I didn't have anything else to lose, so I signed up for the UCLA EMT program, and the rest is history.
So there's so much to talk about. I'm trying to figure out where's the best way to go. Okay, so tell us what, so, because all in all, you're just like it always has been. Your gifts, your abilities are they're in full motion as you're becoming a paramedic. Tell us about some of the first experiences that you had when you started seeing um souls leaving the body, when you would, come onto a scene. If there was a cadaver, you would see the soul standing next to it. You would see the transition. I mean, you've seen a million different experiences that to a normal person just, living their life that's never heard of any of this stuff would look at you like you have 12 heads.
Mhm.
Please, what? I mean,
Yeah, girl.
I don't
Well,
even know
here,
where to begin with this.
well, here's the cool thing. So, first responders, by nature, we're very type A. Um, we tend to be very intense. We're running towards what everybody else is running away from.
Mm,
So it's calling, right? There's something in us, there's something about us. And we tend to be very kind of not abrasive, but just like, you have to have a certain temperament to be able to work in that world long term. And I took to it like a duck to water. So the volatility of and violence of my upbringing primed my nervous system to go into the 911 systems. And so I started in South Central. So we would do Compton, Inglewood, Hawthorne, like Carson, this whole area, sometimes Watts if everybody was busy. So very, very active, busy area. And essentially, I didn't I was still closeted. I finally felt like I fit in with people. Like these guys could like, I couldn't offend them and I'm not too intense for them, or I wasn't talking about seeing dead people. I still wanted to like fit in, but it was kind of a proving ground and I just felt very comfortable. I just was like settled in. So once I learned the basic skills of how to run a call, because there's a lot of mechanics, what ended up happening, and this is again, nothing I wanted, nothing I was trying to do, still closeted at this time. But the energies just started working through me. Okay. So I would respond to a call. I became the paramedic who was always there for death. Everybody loved working with me because I would get all the gnarly calls, right? But what would happen is we would get the dispatch call and I would know 2 or 3 paces ahead what was going to happen. We would get on scene and I'd put my like get out of the ambulance and everything would slow down and it would literally be like movie Matrix. It's just like and everything became available to me simultaneously. So I would be looking at the patient's body, right? I'd be looking at the soul. So if somebody's dying, where are they in the process of death? Are they standing next to their body? Are they confused? Do I have to telepathically start communicating, hey, you were just in a car accident, you're dead. We're going to pull your body out of the car. I'm going to start CPR, like just to give them an understanding of what's happening. But again, I didn't know why it was happening. I didn't want it to happen initially, and I was still trying to like hide from it. But what ended up happening is it's like what you resist persists, right?
Mhm.
There's so many parts of ourselves that we don't accept and we're trying to hide and we're trying to shirk away from, but they keep coming back. Well, the invitation is to be like, all right, well, what is this? Like, I may not understand this part of myself or be scared of this part of myself, but why is it here? And I was able to be there in so many people's worst moments.
Mm.
And I became a midwife for death, right? I was just able to just come on and it's like the entire the scene would just go be blanketed in kind of this calm. It's like we could manipulate the energy of the scene to calm everybody down so that we could do what we needed to do in terms of patient treatment wise. Once I saw this countless times, and there's a difference between a medical death and a traumatic death. I can talk about those. But after being there and witnessing so many deaths and so much crises for so long, I had to start challenging myself and being like, this can't be bad. How is it that this could be bad and I could burn in hell when I'm literally helping people like in their worst moments? And so that cognitive dissonance again started to come in where I was like, you know what? Maybe what I was told was a bunch of shit. Maybe what I was told was coming from a totally different, vantage point of dogma and fear and misunderstanding.
Mm.
Maybe my experience is actually okay, right? So I began the process and I've actively midwifed probably 20 to 30 people as they died, and then hundreds of dead bodies in all different shapes, sizes, and various stages of decomposition. So I'm super familiar with that death and that razor's edge between life and death. And it's such an honor to
Yeah.
be able to be with people. Like it's such an honor. I still get goosebumps
Yeah.
thinking
I'm
about it.
covered in them. Yeah. Incredible. So you I think you've said that you have seen, not only have you seen the soul, it's the soul looking at its own cadaver, but I think you've seen angels as well as past loved ones greet these souls to kind of help them with the transition. Is that correct?
Yeah, you're never ever alone in death, so don't freak out. So even if you're by yourself and you die out there somewhere by yourself, you are never alone energetically. There will always be somebody showing up for you. So rest assured, I never ever saw like anybody not be greeted, and I never saw anything dark come and like snatch people away. I never saw that. And I saw a lot of death. So what I would see most times in a medical death, like cancer, hospice, end stage, whatever, the person's in bed and they're experiencing, the thinning of the veil, just meaning that their auric field is dilating. And that dilation of the field allows all of that stimulus that's around all of us at all times. The person starts to be able to perceive it because their senses are being able, they're heightening, right? So we often hear of people who are in bed in hospice talking to their dead loved ones
Mhm.
or seeing pets or
Mhm.
whatever, right? Well, it's real because of that. And so their auric field is dilating, the veil is thinning. At the moments of death, this was so cool to see. And it's divine because every time I saw it, it looked the same. Sometimes it would be faster, sometimes it would be slower, but it was a very organized algorithm. So I knew that this was coming from something higher. So the heartbeat stops, the respirations go through kind of a guppy breathing thing. And then as that happens, the soul, it starts like a ribbon unfurling at the base of the down by the tailbone. And it goes up the Sushumna, the central column of chakras. And then they'll shoot out the top of their head, like a little like Nerf gun water blaster, but it's like out the top of the head. And it just looks like a little mist coming out the top. But it was so cool to watch the chakras, which they look like kind of these pulsing like wheels of energy, these, right? And they would just stop and this energy would come up the spine. Well, that's the light at the end of the tunnel. That's what
Wow.
that is. They're going up and out. And so as they're shooting out the top of their head, I'd see their dead loved ones come up. And I don't know why they're always in the corner at the ceiling. I don't know what that's about. I mean, sometimes I guess they would be down more towards level ground, but usually it was kind of up in the right-hand corner. And I'd see dead loved ones, I'd see pets, sometimes there'd be religious archetypes. But these people would come out of their body and it would be like this family reunion. So they're partying up in the corner, all happy, right? And if this is a hospice or something, all we're doing is pronouncing death. We don't have to run a CPR or anything. So that was my experience with the medical death. And it's very organized. Now, with a trauma, it's different in the sense that the person doesn't understand. Okay. So, my biggest message, if you guys get nothing else from listening to this, is please, please live your life
Mhm.
today. Like, do it. Say the words, take the trip, buy yourself the flowers, like, let yourself do what you want to because we all think we have time, but the truth is, none of us know. And every single day in the 911 system, there's people who get in their car, they're distracted. They go through Starbucks drive-through. They come out, bam, they get T-boned. That's it. Or there's drive-bys, or there's school shootings, or there's building collapses, or there's earthquakes, or there's whatever, right? This is the world we're living in. So everyone thinks they have time, but in a trauma, like you're just there in your body and then you're knocked out. So the person is confused. My experience would, I'd come on scene and it would be a crumpled car and a little crumpled body in the car, and I would see the soul of the person standing next to the car and the soul looks like the person, but I could see through them. And they're just standing there like confused, like looking down at their body, kind of like.
Mhm.
And so I saw this enough times that over time, I just kind of intuitively developed this protocol of like, again, yeah, rapid fire, like you're dead, you were shot, this is what we're doing. And so that they could start to have an understanding. But in trauma situations, 9 times out of 10, we would be extricating them from the car. We'd be like, putting them on the backboard and plugging all the holes from gunshot wounds or whatever. And there would be an angel that would come in. And now, my experience with angels, it's not like this winged, long haired, blonde creature. It's not that. To me, it started like fireflies. And it
Wow.
would be this light of consciousness that would grow in form, usually pretty tall, 8 to 12 feet, kind of a cobalt blue, silver energy, androgynous, and just almost like a light being. So, but it's consciousness, you guys.
Mhm.
It's not like a thing, it's consciousness, it's a vibration. And celestials bring in the most exquisite love. So here we are, there's, violence and people screaming, and we got body parts all over the place or whatever's happening, and it's super intense here. And all of a sudden, this frequency would come in and it would just cover everything with this silent calm. And the person whose body we were working on would look at the angel and it would just naturally go towards it and they would
Wow.
embrace. And then I'd watch them disappear. And then we'd pull the body out and start CPR or do whatever we were doing. But I knew that they had already balanced.
Wow.
Yeah. Incredible. It was so
Incredible.
much for me. I like totally did not know what to do. Like,
I bet. I can't imagine.
what am I supposed to do with this?
I love that you bring up not seeing dark entities when someone is either has passed or is in the process of transitioning. You have seen and still do see negative and dark entities around living people, but you've never seen it when they're passing, which I think is just a huge important point to drive home. I want to talk about what you see when there's been a suicide.
A lot of times it was, I did see remorse of the soul who had suicided. Sometimes, and I get it, it's a lot of people don't actually want to die. They just don't want to feel this way anymore. But there are people who get to that point where they opt out, and that is an option. And I know that dogmatically there's, kind of judgment around it and a lot of like, oh, you'll be caught forever in purgatory or you're burned in hell or whatever. I didn't see that. I saw it as kind of like a remediation where the soul may have had a little remorse of like, oh man, because again, you go into higher awareness and you can see everything and you can see that it would have changed, right? Oh, if I would have just held on, it could have actually gotten different. But that's okay. They made their choice. And I always saw them with guides. And so there's a lot of different types of guides, whether these guys almost looked like monk or just some sort of like professor almost looking guide where the soul was escorted into kind of this room and it just looked like they were going to be studying some curriculum or like there's something there that they had not yet learned that they were meant to, some sort of karmic balance that they needed to like meet before they could cross over. So it was just going to be like a little bit of a remediation and integration period, but no banishment, no shaming, no like you're so terrible for doing this. It was more just kind of like, here, come over here, get a timeout. Everything's okay. You got a little bit more content to work through here, and then you're going to integrate. Yeah, I've never seen it like all the whole will never leave any fragmented part of itself like behind, right?
Wow.
Ultimately, there's a period.
Ah,
Yeah.
I have had goosebumps this entire interview. Something I wanted to talk about was I've heard you talk about this on another podcast and kind of this opt-out period. You saying opt out, talking about suicides reminded me of this. Um, or like a negotiation period and everyone knows what SIDS is and sudden infant death syndrome. And I know that this opt-out period is revolved around that. Can you explain all of that for us?
When we're coming into human form, now remember, okay, this is not the only life we're currently living. There's thousands of parallel lives. There's trillions of different dimensions, right? It's really, really cute for us to think that we are like all there is. Pretty typical human. Like we like ourselves so much, don't we? So we come here to Earth and it's about duality, contrast, light, dark, masculine, feminine, high, low, yin, yang. It's about the five senses and having a limited sense of self because ultimately we're always all these other things. So we come here to intentionally get in the sandbox to have our little individual experience. Like I'm Allie and this is what I like. I'm Sarah and this is what I like, right? And it's perfect. And the ego plays into that. So the ego gets a really bad rap in the spiritual community, but ultimately it's a very important part of being human and why we're here. We all know the narcissist, crazy, like runaway people like that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about your likes and dislikes. And all of this matters and makes sense. So we make a choice to incarnate here. Yes, we've all done all the things. Okay. We've all been here. It's like people are like, I've been here 672 times. I'm like, that's cute. Okay. Because it's like we've all kind of been doing this forever. So here we are. We choose to come back. Now, they say we choose our parents, we choose kind of like the topical overview. These are the things I want to experience. And we are doing karmic balancing. We are choosing ancestral contracts and programs. We are choosing different dynamics. There are souls that incarnate. There are like dark energy souls that come in. There are lighter energy souls that come in. It's all about the contrast. They're equal. One is not better than the other, okay? Because it's all playing a part here in this dualistic experience. Now, about the opt-in or opt-out, sometimes the soul is like, yeah, I'm going to go back. And then they come back and they get squeezed in this little body and they're like, maybe not. And there's an opt-out window that's usually about a year. And that's energetically what SIDS is.
Wow.
And so the soul comes back. I'm going to dip my toe in it. Just kidding, not ready to do it. And they'll go up and out. And so there's opt-out periods like that. And we have multiple opt-out periods throughout each of our life cycles, meaning many times that we could die. And ultimately, some people say there's a certain number. I don't know if that's true, because there's so many different types of experiences we can have as humans. But ultimately, we will all complete this incarnation cycle. And death is just like taking off a heavy coat. There's nothing to fear. You
Yeah.
remember everything. You remember what you were doing before, and you remember the rest of the gig. And so again, there's nothing to fear in it. But that's SIDS. That's an opt-out. Doesn't make it any easier on the parents.
No,
But
absolutely not. And something I've heard in the same sense is that miscarriages are very much the same way. It's usually, the soul of the baby deciding now's not the right time.
yeah,
So that's fascinating. It makes complete sense. So really quickly, I know we're running out of time. I definitely want you to talk about your work. Right before we do that, can you just explain to people what you're seeing energetically when a baby's being brought to the world? I know you said it was something like a gold light, and I just find it beautiful. And yeah.
it's super neat. There was like a powder pink, kind of a silvery and a gold energy. So kids, especially newborns, it's just they're like, all it is little particles of gold light vibration. And there's no like auric field in the way that we have auric fields because that doesn't develop until after the age of 7. So it's just like a little ball of, source consciousness coming out. Really beautiful to see.
Wow.
And kids, we all went through it until around 6 or 7 when everything starts to shift and the ego forms and then programs start to take hold and stuff like that, but we all had that, like, when things were joyful and
Yeah.
everything was possible. That's that consciousness. Beautiful.
Beautiful. So yes, please spend as much time as you would like, just kind of summing up what you do for work because it's incredible. I know a lot of your clients are people that have just like gotten to their wits end and have tried everything. And I mean, your work really is it's beautiful. And I know that there's going to be some listeners that just hear it and just feel, you know, energetically like like they need to reach out to you. I already know it.
Much the energetic paramedic. So 15 years of actual 911. Then I decided, hey, I got to figure out what this is. So I studied for 25 years. So all the things, like I went through all the different meditations and shamanism and plant medicines and kundalinis and tantras and yogas and different meditations of all kinds. I did my own shadow integration. I did my own trauma healing, like somatic trauma process work. And I was coming to terms with myself and everything that I'd gone through. Now I see all of it as wisdom. That said, then I also had to learn about energetics in the world, that the way that I work with it. So my practice developed and it was hysterical because here I am like this top dog senior level like medic and I finally was like, yeah. And then my intuition's like, you got to do energy healing. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, what? Like, no, no, I don't hear you. And so it took me a long time to finally kind of acquiesce and say, okay, now I have to follow this track. But it's been incredibly beautiful. So medical intuition is one of my specialties since I can see the auric field, I can see the organ systems, I can see blocks and occlusions, I can see fear, I can see disease, I can see addictions, I can see programs, all that stuff whenever I'm talking to somebody. And so we'll do medical intuition and even more so psychic surgery. So psychic surgery is a specialized branch of energy healing. All branches of energy healing are valid and valuable. They're all like branches of the same tree. So psychic surgery, in layman's terms, it's like being pressure washed and roto-rooted. So it's like you're stuck, you've been trying everything, you're lethargic, or you have insomnia, or whatever your physical presentation is. It's like we pull you out of the ditch, completely overhaul your entire auric field, open up all of the chakras, and get to the root
Mm.
cause of whatever your dis-ease is, whatever the trauma, whatever the addiction, whatever. So it's like going in and then clearing the field and roto-rooting up through the chakra systems so that your energy can perfuse. So it's far more technical than that. But people are like, what is psychic surgery? And it's like, well, you feel like you weigh 1,000 pounds and got totally reset so you can get back to being yourself so you can figure out what the hell to do with your life. And they're like, oh, okay, that. And so I have a full-time practice, and I have for over 10 years, and I have clients all over the world. And I put out my first book, Journey into Grace, Tales of a Psychic Paramedic. And that's what Allie and I have been talking about. Like, I shared my coming to terms with process of being like this, what I saw on 911 calls, and now how I work with people. And it's just beautiful because it's our time, you guys.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong. We are, there's a lot of us sensitives. There's nothing to fear. There's no shame. We are 10 to 30% of the world's population. There's billions of us, and it is our time to come online. So what I do, in addition to like individual sessions, so if you're if you're just want help with your gifts, or if you're stuck in a rut, or if you've been trying all the things, just reach out. We can totally help you with that. I've also got Grace Place. It's an online community of sensitives from all over the world, everybody leaning in to make it make sense and help each other out. And what I'm starting now and building now is Empath X. Sensitivity is your superpower. So it's our time. We don't have to be fragile and hide away because we're sensitive. We don't have to think there's anything wrong with us. We are here for a reason, and we're actually pretty badass.
Yeah.
So what I'm currently coming up with is like the curriculum to literally be like, okay, if you see stuff, do this. If you hear stuff, do this. If you feel stuff, do this. If you're overwhelmed, do this. Like, because people just want to know what to do and then take the fear away, find community and acceptance, and then be able to thrive.
Sarah, your story, your work, I mean, just all of it. It's just incredible. It really, really is. I'm sorry you've gone through some of the things you've gone through, but I know you see it for what it is, and what you've been able to transmute and what you've turned things into. And I mean, it's miraculous. It really is.
I appreciate that so much. Yeah, no, that means a lot. It's been a long haul. And at the same time, yeah, it all makes sense.
Yeah.
So if you guys are in a place where it's dark, or you feel like you don't know what to do, or like it's never going to shift, I promise you, if you are willing to just lean in, if you're willing to soften and shift to, this isn't being done to me, why is this here? What can I learn? How can I grow? What can I do to shift the circumstance? It changes everything. And the more that you do that, the more energy you'll have. The more energy you'll have, then the more you'll have bandwidth to learn about why you are the way that you are.
Mm.
And I'm wired that I am, and you guys are equally as gifted in your own ways. And all of us are needed. It's a tapestry, and we are stronger together. It's not about any one of us. It's not about guru syndrome. It's not about any of that. It's about all of us leaning in and understanding that we are all the guru. Like, you are your own greatest teacher and healer. And so remembering how to feel that changes everything. So
Mm. I love it. I love it. Sarah, this was a delight and an honor. Thank you so, so much.
thank you for having me. And just last thing, it's just sarahkgrace.com if you guys
Yes,
want to get a hold of me.
yes. All the links. Don't you worry. Thank
Thanks for
you.
listening, everybody. Reach out.